All right, and then one more. First day is Joshua is up. Resetting my timer. Start sharing your screen.
I think
Perfect.
that looks
All
good.
right. All good. Go ahead.
All right, so today my presentation will be about electronic voting and the cryptography and security involved with it. So let's narrow down the definition of electronic voting. We're going to focus on two different topics. We're going to focus on internet-based voting, and we're going to specifically focus on the country of Estonia. They're one of the few nations that have a national online voting system built for all their primary elections. There's a great independent study about it, lots of good information, so we're going to use that. And we're also going to use something that we're more familiar with here in the US, voting machines. They range from scanner-based machines, like the one in my district is a scanner-based machine, to also direct recording electronics, DREs, where it's like a touch screen to enter your votes. And those are the two basic forms of electronic voting machines. All these systems use cryptography, and they use it in a variety of different ways. So let's start with Estonia. So again, they have a online voting system built for all their custom elections. So they use public key cryptography in order to do this. Using their iVoting client, voters can use a national ID card and PIN to create a digital signature that is then verified by the server to verify if you can vote and what you're voting for. After you verify yourself, you're given the list of candidates for your district. You make your vote, and then you send it off via HTTPS to the server to be put in the ballot. So the way that this is done, it kind of emulates like absentee voting here in the US, where ballots are double sealed. The outer seal of these digital votes are a digital signature, again, of the voter himself with the ID card and PIN. And then the inner seal is the actual ballot, but it's anonymous, so that way you can't trace back who voted who. After the election is done, the outer seal is removed and only the inner seal remains. This outer seal is also used so that voters can check with the phone app to make sure that their vote was actually counted. And there's a whole backup for the system as well. There's still offline in-person voting that people can still go to even after voting online. So that way they can just nullify any online voting and have their official in-person vote take precedence. So yeah, this crypto system works pretty well. They've been using it, they're still using it today, and it's pretty good. Now, for cryptography use in electronic voting machines in the US, it's a bit more complicated. Being a free country and all, we have a ton of manufacturers and a ton of machines. Again, scanning machines to direct recording electronic machines. There's no standard across the board on security or cryptography in use. This is sort of a benefit because with all these systems in place, it's going to be harder to pinpoint exactly which machine is using what. But we do have some examples from various Everest reports and other independent studies. So we have found, there have been found digital signatures on voter cards and administrator cards for these machines. The voter cards need to be able to vote only once, so that way, you can't have multiple votes from the same person. And administrator cards, you want to have only the authorized people able to make changes to the machine. For transfer, most of the time, to be as secure as possible, the votes are transferred physically with a memory card, but sometimes they are transferred over the internet or over the ways with a TOS protocol, which is pretty secure. In these reports, there were some ciphers found. There was use of a blowfish cipher, which is a pretty old cipher from 1993. It is a symmetric block cipher. It's pretty secure, but there's a newer version out now. I think it's called Twofish, but the report is from 2007, so they probably upgraded. There are also some CRC16 checks, which we'll get into later. So there's a ton of different machines, a ton of different ways that they're used to be secure. So knowing all this, there's cryptography in the system. We've seen it clearly, but does it make it a viable option? Does it make it a secure and safe option just because we use all this cryptography? Well, unfortunately, it is not at all. There are a lot of issues with electronic voting that cryptography just can't solve on its own. And that's what this thing we'll talk about too, because even though we've been going through all this theory of cryptography, if you don't use it properly, it does not make any sense at all. So let's start with Estonia again, right? Actually, no, first, before we do that, we got to talk about what makes a voting system invalid, okay? So you don't even have to successfully do an attack for it to be invalid. If you can cause doubt to be in place during the election, that voting system has failed. If the voter cannot trust that their vote was recorded accurately and fairly, along with everyone else, that system just isn't doing its job. The easiest example of this is 2016 presidential elections. The Russian interference was in the news for like the last 2 years because of it. And again, we don't even know if they actually did anything with election results. We don't know if it would have changed the election results, but the doubt was enough to cause all this, this mess. And we do not want that to happen again. So again, knowing this, let's go to Estonia and look at the problems. The crypto system is great. It's been working great. Public key cryptography, they change the key every election, good stuff. But the way they actually run the election causes enough problems that I feel there's enough doubt to be caused to not trust the system. So there's a lot of things. So first of all, when you're writing these voting systems, you do not want to have any access to the internet at all, because you do not want any chance for a hacker to be able to get in, drop some malware that can potentially harm software. So in order to have the safest chance of that, you just don't connect these official systems to the internet when possible. Also, again, breaking procedure for these elections can result in hackers having a way to manipulate votes or cause doubt. So what were these issues in the election? So in the 2013 study, they were there to actually observe an official election take place. And here's some things they found, some of the highlights. So on the left, they had an unsecured build system. So this is this computer that they use to build the client software that users vote on and assign it from the government saying, hey, this is trusted official software for the election. Install this, run it, you'll be safe, right? This is supposed to be on a computer with no internet, no outside access. And yet, if you look at the desktop, you can see an online gambling application, PokerStars. You can also see a few other applications that result in, internet activity. So there's a chance malware may have been downloaded on the system, get officially signed by the government as being good, and distributed to everyone. What happens if that's on every single voter server, on all their computers? That's not good at all. From the same talk, they also found they were recording themselves for transparency's sake, showing, hey, this is what we're doing. They record themselves entering the root password in for the servers. So now if you're watching and you pay attention slightly, you can see the passwords for the election server. That could just lead to horrible things. And then finally, there was a bit of an error in one of the machines where usually a DVD is used to transfer votes. It didn't work properly, so they came up with a quick solution of using a personal USB stick. We don't know where that USB stick has been. We don't know what's on that USB stick, but now using it to transport official results. What if there's malware on that? What if it changes the results? We don't know. But now it's just been used and they record themselves doing it. So again, tons of issues just the way this was even, just ran. The cryptography is just bypassed with all this just poorly done procedures. So besides this, they were able to also just go after the software of the client and server themselves. The same study was able to get the open source software, modify it slightly to make a mock collection, and found multiple client and server software attacks available. These attacks, again, did not have to change any results of the election. They just have to show that the system cannot be trusted, and they have succeeded. If they can plant doubt, which they were able to do, they were able to show that the election could be rigged, and that is not good at all. Yeah, so this is Estonia, though. Let's talk about the voting machines in America. Are we better? Well, we can't even get the cryptography right sometimes. Data is not stored securely in some of these machines. Some of them don't even encrypt the data on these voting machines. A reporter was able to buy a machine on eBay for $100 that contained voter information and the votes themselves. $100, and there are multiple of them on eBay. So some of them are not even secured, and the ones that are, they just don't do a good job of it. From the Everest report 2007, they were going over a bunch of machines, and one of them was the iVotronic DRE, which uses, again, the Blowfish symmetric key cipher, good enough for 2007. But they encrypted the data, but then in their brilliant minds, they decided to also store the key for that data on the same drive, unencrypted, basically making it pointless. So they don't even implement right. And they also, the other thing was a CRC16 check to transport votes. CRC16 is an error checking hash. It's used to make sure data isn't corrupted, and yet they're using it in an official manner as a cryptographically secure algorithm, which it was never designed to do, and yet these companies are. Votes could easily be manipulated to still pass the check, but have completely different results. And then finally, for these scanner machines, they have paper backups, but most states that do use paper backups never check it after an election. They just sit it there because it takes too long, which is just asking for trouble. So besides, cryptography isn't even good, but let's talk about physical issues. There are plenty of physical issues on these machines. So from both the Everest report and from DEF CON voting villages, they found numerous issues. The DEF CON voting village, by the way, is every year at the DEF CON Information Security Conference. There's a voting village where numerous researchers and studiers find all these voting machines and look to see what they can find for problems. Here's some highlights. So they found hardwired PIN codes and passwords. Idiots was an actual password that was used on these machines so that you can log into any account with this hardwired password. And that was on all these machines. That's just not good. Same thing with hardwired encryption keys across the board. For this one model would be the same encryption key. There are other funny ones where it's like if there's a paper jam, a supervisor has to fix it to make sure the election can go. So instead of making sure a supervisor was there, it would just automatically go to supervisor mode. What if a supervisor wasn't there? What if some random person had changed everything about the election because a jam happened? Again, we already talked about this before, but multiple machines had issues where encrypted data would be stored with the unencrypted keys on the same drive. There are also, for some reason, machines that were able to be connected to and modified remotely, which shouldn't be a problem in the first place. They should never have that opportunity, but apparently some of the machines did. So these are kind of old studies. These are, again, 2007 Everest report, 2013 Estonia. Some of these machines, again, from the 1990s, but unfortunately, they're still in use. In 2018, 34% of all election equipment used in USA were at least 10 years old. The DEF CON report from 2019 found machines used in 20 to 30 states with all those problems listed. These machines are not updated. They're left in some warehouse between elections, and for some reason, some of them are even connected to the internet. In short, every US voting machine subjected to rigorous independent security review suffered vulnerabilities that would enable vote stealing attacks. So these are individual machines, right? So if someone got the individual machines, they could compromise it, right? But that's one machine at a time. You can't go bigger than that, right? Well, unfortunately not. These machines have to be programmed before the election to have, each jurisdiction's candidates, policies, whatever each person's voting on, These machines have to be programmed by either the local government or by the machine vendors. One such company writes software for 2,000 jurisdictions in 34 different states. These memory cards can easily be compromised to have malware installed in them to produce fraudulent results and errors. One of the videos that I was using for research showed one of these DRE machines able to just swap the votes at the end of an election based on a malware compromised card. So what happens if an attacker went to one of these companies that happened to program the elections for a few swing states at a presidential election? What if it didn't get noticed? Well, you just have a new candidate that should not have happened because of just one company. This is a lot of non-cryptographic talk, but it has a huge part of cryptography still. You can have the coolest, most advanced, most secure crypto system imaginable, but if you don't implement it properly, or you just don't follow procedures accordingly, it does not work at all. If Eve is able to compromise Alice or Bob without intercepting data or trying to decipher anything, they're going to do that. It's the easier option, and all they got to do is cause doubt to happen. Because of all this, electronic voting does not feel like a dependable option. It's not one I personally can trust. Paper voting may take longer, maybe more expensive, but it is a very secure system compared to electronic voting. And here are some of my resources. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, anybody have questions?
Do you think that there would be any signature schemes that would be like secure enough to be used for electronic voting?
Well, there are, like, again, like the one
it seems like a lot of the problems that you found like were with the problems were with the systems themselves. But is there a problem with the signatures or not?
From what I found, again, a lot of the stuff is hard to do, but like the cryptography for, like, say, the Estonia voting was good. It was good cryptography. And then for even the Blowfish cipher that they use for some signature schemes, it was good enough. But the issue is with cryptography, you can have good cryptography, but if you just allow everything else to be weak, it doesn't matter. So there could be a good scheme. I don't doubt, especially now with all this, recent election coming up, they want to be as secure as possible. I don't doubt they're working on something amazing. But just if the main point of this talk was like, you can have great cryptography, but it doesn't matter if you have everything else being weak. So I bet there is a good scheme for it, but you got to work on everything else too.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other questions?
Did you stumble upon any ways to, like, I don't know. I guess the main problem here is people, right? So how do you fix people?
Have paper backups. Just do you can, it's a lot. The main thing, the easiest solution to all this is paper, because you can't do. It's a lot harder to forge paper, a lot harder to make paper votes be wide scale. You can do like granny farming attacks where you get to like a whole neighborhood, but like that doesn't scale up because eventually you get caught. The easiest solution is just go back to paper voting, because that way just any large scale attack will be a lot harder to do.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you talked a lot about how, like, a lot of these things we don't know if the system has been compromised, which basically means the system has failed. But when you were reading up on stuff, did you actually run into any situations where you found that there was proved tampering of an election and things where it was actually shown that stuff was compromised?
I haven't found any official election. There was the main Russian, the most recent thing is that Russian hacking thing. I wasn't able to personally find anything where stuff was compromised, but from all these research talks, there was plenty of proof showing they could easily be compromised without people knowing. And that's enough to cause like the average voter, I feel, should like be questioning what they're voting on because of that.
Alrighty. Anybody else? Other questions for Joshua? Perfect, thank you. Well, you stop sharing your screen, please and thank you. And then on Monday, Seth, Mandy, and Sarah are up. Yes, we think that's right. Yes, good, okay. All right, I'll log in a couple minutes early so that you guys can practice sharing your screen if you want to, but it worked today, so it should work fine. Everybody who is doing a remote submission, pre-recording, that is due on Monday. And that's due at noon. So if you're doing a submit ahead of time pre-record, that's due at noon. Again, make sure to upload it to YouTube, follow the directions in the email that I sent, contact me if you're having issues. This is also why we set the deadline as noon, so that it isn't midnight and you're frantically emailing and I'm in bed. So if you have questions, let me know. Anything else before I have you guys sign off for today? Anything else for other questions? Getting a lot of people shaking their heads at me. All right, we'll have more presentations on Monday. I think this worked as well as it possibly could, so thank you. I appreciate that for Laura, Joshua, and Ashley being my guinea pigs. So thank you very much, and I will see you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend.